I was on Reddit this morning and I was going through my feed and I saw a good question in one of the subreddits that I follow. The question was, do I need to disidentify from my mind in order to achieve happiness/inner peace? And I thought, that's a great question. We're so focused on our search for answers in this world that I think we sometimes forget there's a more important factor. More important than getting the answers is asking the right questions. And to me, this is an example of the right kind of questions we should be asking when we're exploring the topics of happiness, mental health, inner peace, and so on. So even though it wasn't asked specifically to me, it was a question that was posed to the entire subreddit, I thought I would appropriate that question and use it to make this video. Do you need to disidentify from your mind in order to be happy? In order to cultivate inner peace, tranquility, and that sort of thing? The answer is yes, in my opinion. In order to experience happiness and inner peace and all the good stuff on a consistent basis, in a deliberate way, because sometimes you experience these things accidentally. I mean, we all do. Everybody knows what it's like to feel content, to feel pleased with the way things are. So what we're seeking really is to be more in charge of these types of mental states, instead of just waiting for them to happen by chance. The idea is that there are certain things we can do, certain practices we can engage in that will lead to the cultivation of this state of mind in a deliberate way. And I think that yes, in order to do this, in order to cultivate happiness and inner peace deliberately, one of the first steps, one of the first essential steps, is to detach, disidentify, or create space between yourself and your mind. And this space cannot be intellectual in nature. In other words, this space has to be felt and it has to be experienced. You can understand what it means to create space between yourself and your mind in an abstract way. You can understand it intellectually. But unfortunately, this is just more mind garbage. You have to see your mind from a distance. Now, if you're clever, you probably know that that's why I named my channel The Outsider's Perspective. That's what I mean by the outsider's perspective. I mean seeing yourself, your mind, and its contents as if you're looking from the outside in. Because usually when you look at your mind, you're looking at it from the inside. You're inside your mind. You identify with your mind, and everything that you see and experience in your mind, you tend to hold on to very closely. And you tend to feel it like it's you and like it's yours. So when you step outside of your mind and you look at it from a distance, you create that space. You disidentify from it. And in that space, you can begin the work of cultivating inner peace and happiness. But you need that space to work in. You can't be in the mind, you can't be swimming in it. You have to be on the shore. So yes, to answer your question, my friend, I believe it is absolutely essential that you learn to create that space, that you learn to disidentify from the mind, and that you learn to look at the mind from a remote vantage point. Again, my astute listeners may begin to detect a hint of trouble here. Because what I'm describing essentially is insanity. Think about it this way. When someone goes crazy or someone acts crazy, what do we say about them? We say, "Damn it, Jim, are you out of your mind?" Well, that's precisely what I'm recommending. It's precisely what I'm suggesting. You need to go out of your mind in order to become sane. But by cultural standards and by majority standards, this is the very definition of insanity. Going out of your mind. What are you thinking? Are you out of your mind? Why, yes. Yes, I am. And I'm not thinking. My mind is thinking. And I can see what it's doing, and in this way, I can identify irrational thoughts. I can identify faulty beliefs. I can identify unrealistic expectations, and I can see how these things are contributing to my misery. So yes, I am out of my mind. Thank you very much. And I'm inviting you to join me. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about when I say the spiritual path will lead to alienation. Of course it will, because very few people are on this path. Even people who think are on this path are often not. They're following a 6-lane superhighway that was paved centuries ago by other people who had no clue what they were doing and had no clue what they were talking about and had ulterior motives, etc., etc., etc. You got to pick a lane, right? Are you in the Catholic lane? Are you in the Protestant lane? Are you in the evangelical lane? But it's one superhighway, and all these people are in different lanes and they think they're on the path. Well, the path is very, very far from this highway, my friends. But if you look carefully to the shoulders of the road on each side, you will find little paths and little trails that lead off into the wilderness. And that's the spiritual path, because in the wilderness, you will make your own path. That is the very definition of spirituality to me. It's a solitary, independent process. You may have teachers, you may have tutors, you may have guides, you may have maps, but ultimately you are the one holding the map and the compass, and you are the one directing your steps in this wilderness. But I digress. So yes, there is alienation that comes with doing this, stepping outside of your mind, detaching from it, etc., etc. Another potential negative side effect, especially early on in this process of breaking the chains of identification with the mind, is the fact that you will feel as if you have no identity. And you may feel panic, anxiety, worry, or maybe even fear, because what you thought you were previously, this mind of yours and the story that it developed for you, the story of Ollie, the story of Joe, the story of Anna, the story of whoever you identify as, this story provides comfort, and it provides security, a sense of knowing who you are and where you stand in the grand scheme of things. And the moment you see that story as merely a script composed by this organism that you co-inhabit this body with, the mind. I like to call it an organism because it has a life of its own, and it's not a computer, although that is also a pretty good analogy sometimes to use. But today I'm using the organism analogy because it really is a thing that has a mind of its own, and it has a will of its own, and oftentimes we are wrestling with this very thing that is supposed to be our servant, the mind. The mind wants this, the heart wants that, and here you are, the little old self, trapped in between, trying to determine which way to go, because it is your choice, whether you know it or not. And when you break away from the mind and you step outside of it, you see that you are the one being pulled in certain directions, and that you have the power to resist that pull and to stand fast. Not only that, to pull these things to you, to assimilate them and make them tools that function for you and perform for you. You have this power, but until you break this identity with the mind, you'll never know it, because you're being carried by the mind, you're being led by the mind, you're being swept along. In the post that they wrote, this person talked about how they felt betrayed, or felt as if they'd been lied to, as if the person they believed themselves to be for years and years and years was just a sham. And that's one way to look at it, and it's not inaccurate, but I think it's not the most flattering way to look at it either. Because in a sense, and at some level, you really are that. You are that role that you've created for yourself, and you are the mind, because on a very fundamental level, all things are one. And so when we make distinctions between self and mind, mind and heart, soul and body, etc., etc., these are purely conventional. They're helpful. They help us understand, and they help me talk about this stuff. But we can't let those conventions confuse us, because the mind and the body are one. The body and the collective are one, the earth and the sun and the galaxy and the universe, all these things are one. And that's fundamental. So the role that you've crafted for yourself, or that the mind has crafted for you, is, in a sense, who you are. At the superficial human cultural level, you really are Ollie, Joe, Anna, whatever your name happens to be. You really are a father, a mother, a wife, a daughter, whatever. All the roles that you identify with. You are those things, or you perform those things. Those are your roles for a short time. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying your roles, and like Epictetus said, we should all strive to put in an impeccable performance, regardless of what our roles are. But the idea is that you create some distance. You don't forget that you are the actor and not the role that you're playing. You still like the role, you still make the best of it, you still put in an impeccable performance. It's not like everything that you've done and everything that you used to think you were is gone. It's not like that. You've just discovered another layer, a deeper layer, where you thought there was none. And so instead of feeling fearful or anxious about this, my advice is to go further, dig deeper. And as I advised this person on Reddit earlier today, find where the discomfort is at its thickest. What's causing you the most discomfort about this experience or this revelation that you've had? And go there. Push there. This is where you will find the gateway to further revelations, which will put everything else in order. And you won't feel anxious anymore. But if you stay where you are now, and if you are paralyzed by these feelings that you're experiencing, well, you might end up turning around and going back where you came from. And that's worse than anything you could do. Because if you've had an experience like this, and you are grappling with these types of questions about the mind and happiness and the nature of who and what you are, the only way to go is forward. To go backwards will lead to a life that is empty and devoid of meaning. And unfortunately, you cannot unlearn or forget the things that you have experienced. And so these things will always be with you, and they'll always nag at you. So don't resist, and don't worry about the feelings that you're going to experience along the way, because they are going to lead you to a place that is, well, I can't even describe it, and I can't tell you how good it feels to be here. You have to find out for yourself. When you get to this place, even bad things feel good. Does that make sense? When you get to this place, you win even when you lose. Does that make sense? I can't really explain it. But you learn how to win even in the face of loss and defeat. You find ways to win. I can't make this up. I'm telling you, it's worth all the discomfort that you're going through now and then some, to continue to proceed and to seek. Because you didn't know there was a doorway. And now you've not only discovered the doorway, hiding in plain sight, you've opened the door, you've stepped through, and yes, maybe you're a little bit anxious, maybe you're worried, but trust me, what lies beyond the threshold is well worth all of the discomfort. And indeed, if you're asking about happiness and inner peace, I can only assume that you want these things. And yes, you will get them. You will have them in abundance, and you will be able to conjure them at will, or at least most of the time you'll be able to, which is a huge improvement over your current state, I'm assuming. Because if you're not able to conjure these qualities at will, if you're not able to locate your center with relative ease, if you're not able to silence the mind with relative ease, then these things are going to be improvements for you. They're going to be improvements in your quality of life. And so, yeah, I can't recommend it enough. You got to pursue it. You got to go forward. You got to keep going. And like I said, unfortunately, the best place to go, the place where you'll make the most progress, the place where you'll make the most worthwhile discoveries, is where the discomfort is at its thickest. So to recap, yes, please, if you want these qualities of happiness, contentment, inner peace, break the bonds of attachment with your mind. It's either your servant or your master. So if you don't know which it is, I hate to tell you, but it's your master. And the only way to see that is to step away. Good luck in your travels, my friend. And I hope that this is useful for you. And if you have any questions of this nature at all, if you're watching this video and you have questions, I have a lot of speculations and I have a lot of hypotheses. So please fire away. You may not agree with what I say, you may not like what I say, but I guarantee you it will give you something to think about. And that's my entire goal here. It's not to give you the right answers, it's to give you the answers you need. The answers you need are often the ones that make you rethink and reconsider things. So, anyway, thanks for joining me, and don't forget to live well, my friends.